requirements? He's listening.
Oh,
No,
and we do have
so
quorum
big.
right now, yes, because
you can
Mike
only
has
have
one.
one.
We'll get.
Let's get
through
started.
the
One
niceties.
parking
We'll get,
space.
well,
Yeah.
that's it. I'll start at 7. We'll get through
Let's
the
go.
niceties,
Yeah,
and they'll all be
yeah,
here.
let's just get started because
Find them when they come in, Robin.
Yeah, because I got to get home and give my diabetic cat his insulin shot.
There you go. Here they are, in a nick of time, and with time to spare. Good
Oh,
job.
look, sure, they come and the lights go out. The lights went out.
All right, I'm going to bring this meeting to order. And welcome everybody to the regular meeting of council on March 5th already. Wow. 2018. I'll begin with our Aboriginal acknowledgement. The City of Nelson acknowledges all Aboriginal peoples on whose traditional territories we stand. We honor their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. Could I have someone move adoption of the agenda? Thank you, Councillor Sherbo, seconded by Councillor Purcell. Anything to add? All in favor? Oh, you have just...
Do we have a late item? We were gonna.
That's up to you to ask us your late.
Yes, I would like to bring a late item forward. It's a request for a late.
Use your mic, Councillor. We have Councillor Daly online as well.
It's a request for a late resolution to AKBLG.
All right, could I have, could we have approval of the agenda with the added item? Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have minutes of our regular meetings, previous meetings of February 5th, and there was a regular meeting and a special regular meeting, or a special regular meeting. Could I have someone move adoption? Thank you, Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Purcell. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We now move on to we have Touchstone's letter of support. Touchstones is applying for funding for a capital project that they would like to do this year to the building, and there's a recommendation that council directs staff to prepare a letter of support for Touchstone's Nelson's application to Heritage BC Columbia Basin Trust for funding of capital projects at Touchstones Nelson.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Sherbo. And
to ask one question before, because
same
the
with
top
Councillor
priority
Warren.
at council is repointing Touchstones. So if this is different, then we're competing against that same money.
Yeah, we did have that discussion.
We had further information. Mr. McClure, could you speak into the mic and give that explanation?
Yes, CAO Cormac, we got your message about that, and so when we were in the meeting, budget meeting, we actually asked Peterson Sad, the facility manager, to be in contact with Touchstones about that, and they found out that there was 2 different funding streams. This particular funding stream that we were going for the repointing is completely different from the feasibility studies.
Good.
We should be comfortable on that.
Okay.
Question.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Our next one is also another letter of request for support, and this is from the Kootenay Lake Partnership. There's a staff recommendation that council directs staff to prepare a letter of support for the Kootenay Lake Partnership application to the Real Estate Foundation of BC for funding for the implementation of the Shoreline Guidance Document. Probably you want to move that one.
I move it.
Councillor Purcell would like to move that, and it'd be seconded by Councillor Warmington. And is there any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Third request for a letter of support is from Anchors. No, sorry, I just touched the wrong thing there. This is that council directs staff to prepare a letter of support. Oh, I'm sorry, folks, I'm on the wrong one.
Uh-oh.
There we are. Now I'm on the right one. That council directs staff to prepare a letter of support for Anchor's application to the Community Action Initiative for funding of the Nelson Fentanyl Task Force.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Sherbo. Seconded by Councillor Purcell. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And Councillor Daly, welcome. You're missing all the snow here, but if there's anything that you need from me, just raise your voice when you need to.
Thank you. I hear you loud and clear.
Great. Okay. So now we're looking at. Oh.
It's the Oxygen Arts Center.
Yes, we are. This next one is that council directs staff to prepare a letter of support for the Oxygen Arts Center application to the Community Resilience through Arts and Culture Program for funding of the pilot of the Kissing Project. Councillor Warmington, seconded by Councillor Purcell. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Council. Now we move on to a development variance permit request. Oops. I got my agenda flying all over the place here. I don't know what I'm doing. So we have an application around 827th Street, and there is a recommendation from staff. I'm sure you've all seen the proposal. And the recommendation is that the application for a development variance permit to vary the requirements of zoning bylaw 3199/2013 to allow for the construction of overhangs to cover existing uncovered stairs on the subject property be approved for Lot 7, District Lot 97, Kootenai District Plan NEP 14044, 827th Street as follows. To vary the interior north side lot line from 1 meter to 0.7 meters as per attached plans. Do I have a mover? Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Sherbo. Discussion, council? Here, it's pretty straightforward. Hearing none. Did you have a question, councillor?
Yes, there appears to be two sets of stairs, and one has a bit of a roof over it. I wondered which one we're talking about.
Both of them.
To both of them.
Oh,
Both of them, yeah, they're both going to be
Refers to
covered.
her overhang not being overhung enough in her letter.
Okay, 10-4.
All right, you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. All right, we don't have the cameras on tonight?
They are.
No, good.
They're recording. You're just not seeing it. I see the
Oh, it just
preview here,
moved.
but
Oh,
they're
do
on.
you? Okay.
I'm waving at it to get its attention.
I was gonna say, phew, then we'd have to worry about, if your shirt's untucked or whatever. We have another application for a development variance permit from someone that lives on 608 Wasson Street. And there is a staff recommendation that the application for a development variance permit to vary the requirements of the zoning bylaw 3199/2013 to allow for the construction of a detached secondary dwelling unit on the subject property be approved for Parcel A, Lot 6, Block 31, District Lot 304, Kootenai District Plan 1135608 Wasson Street as follows. 1, to vary the maximum building footprint from 55 square meters to 65 square meters as per attached plans. And secondly, to vary the maximum building height detached secondary dwelling unit from 5 meters to 5.7 meters as per attached plans. Thank you, Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Warmington. Is there discussion on this? Or any comment? Yes, Councillor Warmington.
Just as it's in keeping with the direction we appear to be going, it seems like a
Seems like a good project. Any other comments?
Would this be considered a laneway house?
Could this be considered a laneway house? Yes.
Oh, okay.
We just haven't changed the name yet.
And just for people in the gallery, council had a very lengthy discussion earlier today with Mr. Toom regarding our laneway housing proposed rules and bylaws. Now, do you have anything to add, Mr. Toom? Nothing, or?
Not if there's any questions, no. There's nothing exceptional about this laneway house compared to the previous variance applications.
All right. You ready? Go ahead, Councillor.
Is there anything with parking? I don't.
Yeah, there is
Always
something with parking. Yes, the site meets the parking requirement. It's quite an older house, so there isn't actually a parking requirement, and nonetheless there are 2 spaces within the property lines and a 3rd space on the boulevard, as we talked about earlier too.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you ready for the question, Council? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks very much. Nelson at its best, universal guaranteed income. So we had Nelson at its best gave a presentation on February 19th to ask for support for this project that is happening with the provincial government. And there is a recommendation, whereas in British Columbia, poverty rates, and in particular child poverty rates, exceed the 14.9% overall poverty rate for Canada. And whereas extreme wealth and income inequality are creating social conflict and eroding community health and well-being. And whereas in Nelson, indicators of extreme inequality, poverty, and in particular child poverty exceed both federal and provincial rates. And whereas guaranteed basic income strategies offer significant potential to mitigate poverty and inequality, therefore be it resolved that Nelson City Council supports the Government of British Columbia's intent to pilot one or several guaranteed basic income approaches to reduce and prevent poverty in BC, and calls on the government to include the City of Nelson as the subject of any such guaranteed basic income pilot study. Do I have a mover? Councillor Sherbo, and seconded by Councillor Warmington. Is there discussion on this?
I think this is really good, and I hope we get it.
All right. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Are you, no comment? Okay. Links Housing Cooperative is our next. We have a request. This is a water and sewer fee deadline extension. So we received a request to extend the deadline, the March 15th deadline, so that they could get a 10% discount. And the staff is recommending that the request by the Links Housing Cooperative to extend the March 15th water and sewer deadline so they will be eligible for the 10% discount be denied. And should these be separate? I
They
think
should
so.
be separate. Yeah.
So that is the staff recommendation. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Warmington. And a seconder. For discussion, all right, Councillor Adams. All right, let's open the floor for discussion. Councillor Purcell.
I think the idea of maybe looking into our policies around this may not be a bad idea. I seem to remember there being something in there about maybe, looking at entities that are providing below market rental housing and seeing whether or not they can still get the 10% discount if they pay quarterly. Something that, where they're still paying their fair share, but get a little bit of a break around that large lump sum. I think that this is the right decision for now, but I wouldn't mind looking at that policy.
I think, Council, that's what kind of part two is that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right. Further comment on this?
And my thoughts echo those of Councillor Purcell, and I'm just also wondering whether or not staff could look at. I realize that you can make quarterly payments, but I know that there's also payment structure that could possibly be set up so that I have next year's paid. I mean, I could start paying now, and hopefully the last payment would come before March.
And you're correct, and we have a lot of that, Council Morrison, where people are having that prepayment plan. One of the challenges, and with this particular group, I think they would really like to go there. They've just been going through a number of financial challenges, and so we had talked about that last year. Is there any way that we could get them to that stage where they would be in front of this? And that may be something as well that gets considered inside, this work that we're talking about with the affordable housing model. Is could we get them to a place that allowed them to have the discount, and maybe whatever that does allows them to get in front of this, for them, for others. So it's not an ongoing forever sort of piece, but I think even as themselves, they said that they would like to have been in that position, but they weren't because of some challenges they had with some of the cost of some renovation and I guess unknown construction they had to deal with.
Thank you for that. I'm just like, because that's one of those things. It's like sometimes people don't. They think quarterly, and they think somehow they've got it all paid, but they don't, and so then they don't get the 10%. And so it's just that taking the time to walk through an organization that has many challenges, and there's lots of financial things that go on, just so that they can try to get ahead of the game a little bit would be good in the future.
We have limited tools in our toolbox around important things like affordable housing. We talk about that all the time, and this is one of the policies that we could look into that could make a small difference, I think.
Any further comments or questions from council regarding this first recommendation? It is unfortunate.
Question.
You ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
I'm sorry, this is a business meeting, and so Okay. Did you have a further submission that besides your letter?
No, I'm just wondering if it would be possible to look at some kind of extension so that it is paid off on a quarterly basis. So it's within your sort of administrative structure, but because that discount not be lost simply because we were able.
Yeah, and I think that considering where we're at in this time of the year and where we would be at with allowing one entity to have that sort of break this year, that's why we were looking at it saying, is there an opportunity for organizations like yourself that provide that affordable type of housing, that could we find something in the policy that we allow that as a certain definition to have maybe pay quarterly and get the 10% discount? That certainly would be something that we would look into, but that would be for 2019.
One last question, would there be any possibility of the housing committee itself sort of looking at this issue and putting forward some ideas?
Councillor Morrison, would the Housing Committee have a look at this policy and advise council?
I think that that would be part of development services looking at a review, like, so when we get to part 2, I think that would come back to us. I realize that you're on the committee, and so I think that that would be when we do that, that would come back for us to be looking at, to make sure it looks like it's working well.
Not at this stage, that would potentially.
In future, yes. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying what your question was as well. Did I call for the vote on that? Yes, I did.
Yes,
Thank
you
you.
did. Yes. Yeah.
And secondly, that the Links Housing Cooperative request letter be considered in the Development Services Review of Affordable Housing Funding Models.
Moved.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Warmington. All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Excuse me, Council. That's the second time today I've spilled water. I guess I'm hoping for rain instead of snow.
Thank you.
Our next item, it's to an amendment of our official community plan, and we're at first and second readings for 711 10th Street. The recommendation, this is around a multi-unit residential dwelling at 711 10th Street, and it's to shift from an institutional zone to a comprehensive development for multi-unit residential, and it's to change the official community plan from institutional designation to multi-unit residential. And council has seen the proposal and is being asked to consider this change. So the resolution is that the official community plan amendment multi-unit residential bylaw number 3398/2018 be read first and second time by title only. Thank you, Councillor Purcell, seconded by Councillor Adams. Discussion. Would council like to discuss any part of this? Councillor Warmington.
Just to clarify or to confirm, this was the institutional zoning allowed them to create student housing, whereas this allows them to create any kind of housing.
That's correct.
Thank you.
So this is to allow other residential opportunities. Okay. Any other questions on this?
This is mostly housekeeping in a way, isn't it? Because we did the zoning and it should have happened.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And that council directs staff to schedule a public hearing.
Moved.
Thank you, Councillor Sherbo, seconded by Councillor Warmington. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Keep doing that.
Councillor Daly, are you still there?
I think
Fell
it's-
asleep.
I'm here
Probably
and
not
I'm
on
following things.
Okay.
Yes.
This next motion is for adoption, and this is for our elections procedure amendment bylaw. And that the motion is that the election procedure amendment bylaw number 3396/2018 be finally adopted.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Warmington. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, now we have
Wednesday market.
Wednesday market relocation. So there was extensive discussion about the Eco Society's weekly Wednesday market and to relocate that market to our new Hall Street Plaza area. And there was the Eco Society, undertook a survey and checked it out, and there is a recommendation. Staff worked with them on this. And the recommendation from staff is that the Eco Society be provided the location of the 400 and 500 block Hall Street for the 2018 Wednesday market. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Is there a seconder for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Sherbo. Discussion. Yes, Councillor Purcell.
Out of curiosity, did we ever consider the 700 block of Baker?
Yes, we did, and the problem with that direction is that there is a service station there.
Lordco or the?
No, the one across the street,
okay.
and
Nelson
so
Chrysler.
people have to be able to drive in there. It's not walk-in business,
Right.
It's motor vehicles, so we can't.
Councillor Warmington.
Given that the 600 Baker and 500 Hall is the preferred option, have we looked at closing off the front part of both the 600 and 700 block of Baker? I know that would take that intersection out of commission, but, you know, up into the Pharmasave and.
Yes.
Lordco.
Because I did have I mean, that is a crosswalk, like it's not lit, and people already cross willy-nilly there, and it seems like you just won't be able to drive through there anyways. Yeah,
It's a four-way stop, isn't it?
it is a four-way.
Staff?
Sorry, I'm not with you.
Better than lit.
Speak into your mic, Mr. McClurk, for.
So what they're speaking about is at the corner,
Can you speak
right
up
there
a
at the
bit,
four.
please?
So when you are at Hall Street, there's the plaza at the one end. You get the
Oh.
first block. They're thinking part of 600 and part of 700. I think the biggest piece that we had was through Protective Services. They were concerned for being able to have access for vehicles through there.
Yeah, the chief actually said that there's absolutely no way that you can have a vehicle come in and then realize they can't go through, turn around on the street, and then head back out. So there has to be a pass-through for vehicles.
Jeez.
Wow, wow.
Okay.
I don't think it's being on Baker Street. I don't think that's what we're hearing. I think it's the space they would like an expanded space. I think they think Hall Street works well. It's just not as the 600 block is a bigger space than the Hall Street space. But again, it does take up more parking. You do close Baker Street. We do have to reroute our buses, so there's a number of challenges with that.
Councillor Warmington, and then Councillor Purcell, and then Councillor Morrison. Go ahead.
Well, I was looking, and what Eco Society has said here is that they want the 600 is their primary a preferred option. But then if that's not agreeable, they would like to stay at the current location, the 400 block of Baker Street.
And there are pros and cons about that particular option in the report. It lists the two Hall Street options, that Baker Street option and the Victoria Street option, right? So I don't necessarily understand that statement, because they do get more space in Hall Street. They do get those amenities that they themselves prefer: the washroom, the electrical outlet, the park for people to sit in. So I'm a little confused by that statement.
Yeah, me too.
Councillor Purcell.
What you're kind of touching on something about this, just wanting to make sure that the Eco Society actually wants to move. Like, I read the letter, but that they weren't said, you know, we want you to move, you're gonna probably have to move, you know, how do you want to manage this? Like, I'm wondering, I guess one of the sorry, focus myself. In its current location, the market's really visible. I certainly often forget it's market day, and I drive down Ward Street and notice it's happening. They definitely make more money from me because of its current location. And there's something I kind of like about the about the centrality of it. Like whenever we've gone through any sort of planning process with the public and with consultants, people identify Warden Baker as the heart of downtown. And there's something subversive and interesting to me about temporarily allowing the public to occupy the public realm in this really full-bodied way. The streets and the sidewalks are public realm, and mostly they're for cars and for shoppers, but we have this, you know, temporary moment set aside in this very prominent, visible part of town where we get to, you know, it reminds me a little bit of critical mass, or of, you know, some of these other initiatives to, or like Take Back the Night, you know, like some of these initiatives where people get to embody their city in a way that's different than normal. So I'm not saying I'm totally against it moving. I'm just, you know, whenever we make a change, we gain something and we lose something. And there's something about not sequestering it off to the edge of town that I actually really like about it being in this central location.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Over to staff just for a second, and then I'll come to you, Councilor Morrison. How many different locations has that market been in since it started?
It was on Josephine in the beginning.
Okay.
Then
Yeah, I remember
I
that.
think it went from Josephine.
To where it is now.
I think where it is now. We talked. Did they? We talked about at the. Yeah, the community center.
That's right.
Right, community center,
Went
thank
to
you.
Baker Street, that's right.
And then now, and its current location. So so it has moved in the past, and so that's an interesting.
I'm not dead
point
set
to-
against it.
No,
It's just-
it's an interesting point to consider, though. There's a pros and cons to every move we make. Go ahead, Councilor Morrison.
So, just when I first looked at this, I really like the Hall Street, and I like the idea that the plaza. I mean, that's what we built this plaza for. And if that isn't going to work, I mean, because that's the one I prefer, I guess, out of all of the options that came to us when we saw these first options. I'm still wondering what has happened to that concept of that I heard for a considerable lot of time when you're downtown and walking around, listening to people, and then looking at the list of NIMBY kind of letters of not in front of my store, well, it's been in front of somebody else's store for a long time. And why is Victoria Street not at the top of the list?
Yeah, I wondered that too.
I still think Victoria, and the reason that I think it's sort of important is that Nelson is a city where we also use our alleyways, and we're trying to do this, trying to rehab and upgrade and make our alleyways lively. And I sort of like that idea of there's Baker Street, then there's that alleyway, and then there's Victoria. Now, I don't expect them to set up in the alleyway, but it's just that idea of moving people off of Baker Street a little bit, and then maybe in their moving around that they use the alleyway, and we sort of grab alleys back in, which has always been, we've talked about it in the downtown plan. There's been lots of strategy of it over the years, and I think that you go by that going to Victoria Street, and I think Victoria could be a great place to try it. I mean, I think it's one of those things that you try that for a couple of years, and if it just doesn't work, then we look again. But I think that we should be incorporating the Hall Street Plaza in more activities in some way.
Over to staff. When locations were discussed, we've discussed Victoria Street in the past, and what was the outcome on that?
They don't prefer Victoria Street. Again, it's a little bit removed, and there's no shade on Victoria Street, and there is residential on Victoria Street that we forget about.
What about the alleys? Like why can't they set up in the alleys?
Not sure we can fully close down the alleys.
Close down the alleys
No,
again for
no.
access.
But we close
hydro.
down the street. Like that seems less tricky than closing down the street.
But the emergency vehicle can still travel down the center. There's a requirement from the fire department about a distance for the tent, so that if need be, an emergency
go-
vehicle could go down the middle.
Down the middle.
There's too much
other
hydro, I
issue
think, in the
are-
back alley.
And the other issues
There's a lot of
are-
hydro in the back alley.
Yeah, and also the delivery trucks and refuse removal. for like,
Wednesdays.
And that's the businesses have parking in the alleyways as well.
I just wonder if it's more of a hullabaloo than closing
Yeah.
the main street.
We haven't looked at that.
yeah. Yeah, and businesses have parking behind there as well, so if a vendor is set up and a business owner is moving a vehicle down an alley, that might be problematic.
Well, they just wouldn't be
But-
able to do it for that day, but yeah.
Yeah, well, you never, but, so that's something to maybe consider for the future.
Because they can't drive down Baker Street on that day either. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's
That's where their access to their parking is.
That They park
Right, we're
behind it.
cutting off their access to their building.
but opening up all kinds on Baker.
Right, but not for the business owners to park there, so.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Daly.
When's the first market of the season?
It says there somewhere.
I have it somewhere, but I, off the top of my head, is it May?
April, May.
Yeah, end of May. It is for 16 weeks again.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I mean, there's enough discussion here. Do we
Goes into
leave this for more discussion for another month?
so too. We need to-
I don't think you have another month.
No, the market, he needs to know, because although they don't start until then, they start putting their ads out and they start basically laying out the street and doing the logistics for the market. So he needs to know how many tents are going up, and he needs to start that advertising. He felt that this March date was the latest they could wait.
Question.
Councillor
Yeah,
Sherwood.
I just,
Go ahead, Councillor Daly.
well, just a couple of comments. I'm in agreement with Councillor Morrison that that's what I understood the Hall Street redo was, to be a market, and I'd like to see it used for that as much as we can. So the staff recommendation leans that way. I am in a bit of a quandary when the group that's going to do the market is saying, well, if we can't have what we want on Baker, then we want to be where we've been for 8 years. It's seemed to have worked. I think there's more discussion needs to take place so you get some clarity on where that position is. I wouldn't want to say, hey, you're going to have Hall Street and we don't have a market at all. So I'd like to know that there's some agreement or some acceptance of that before you sort of foist it on them.
That's it.
So from staff, I guess, what was the thinking, or what was the response from Eco Society on option 2 in your discussions? Or option 1?
Yeah, I've talked with Jesse quite a bit. When we talked, he did not talk about, which I guess is why my confusion, because he didn't talk about that it was either 600 Baker or 400. We talked about 600 Baker and 500 Hall. So I talked to him very definitely about those two locations. We went out, marked the areas together. I understood his challenges with the reduction in size, and it definitely is less than what they would get on 600 Baker, but most definitely it is more stalls than what they get staying in their current location, which he indicated was a goal of theirs.
Go ahead, Councillor Morrison.
All right.
Mayor, I had my hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Morrison.
Thank
I
you.
have to defer to Councillor
Thank you,
Sherwood.
Mayor. I prefer the new location. I think it's good to change things up, and it would allow free flow of traffic through Baker Street again, because it being blocked off on Wednesdays is, I find it problematic. And I think this is a good idea to try a new location, see how it goes.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison.
Just to follow up to Councillor Daly, and he didn't say this, but I'm going to say this. I mean, and a bit of no offense to the Eco Society, they might not like where we might land, but this was also the group that said if we didn't have permanent structures and shelter, that the Saturday market in Cottonwood was going to be an absolute disaster. And look at what happened. People like putting up their tents. People really like that. And when we first talked about taking those down, this was, they were here, we had debate, we had discussion. You can't tear them down. Vendors need to be covered. They need to have back shelter for the wind and the rain. And somehow miraculously, the Cottonwood Falls Market on Saturday has bloomed and grown. So I'm not sure that we obviously want to take into consideration the Eco Society and where they think it's best, but I think also is that we've seen in the past that the change has worked and it's been embraced by the vendors. Change is always difficult, but it seems that there was some great adaptation, and everybody's happy with what happened on a Saturday. I'm sure whatever's going to happen for Wednesday will also be constructive and will work for the vendors.
Thanks, Counselor. Are we finished with this one?
Just, if I could offer one thing.
June
June
13th.
13th.
Yeah.
I think we have a bit of time.
So
What I'd like to offer as a win-win would be to go to the 400 or 500 block of Hall Street. And I see that we're not going to change the annual fee, but that we're saying here, we want you to move. Maybe we could adjust that annual fee to half of that for the year while they try a new location and see how it works. And so rather than $28.80, make it $14.40. Because that would be my amendment I'd offer.
is this
Make a
council?
motion.
So right now, I did have them combined, but it
We'll
went on the
separate
floor
that?
separate, so right now, we're just talking about the location.
So the location, so we've discussed as we're looking at the 400 and 500 block of Hall Street, and that's what we're voting on, council. Are you ready for the vote?
Question.
All in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
I'm sorry, Councillor Daly, are you opposed?
No, I was in favor.
Thank you.
I
All
was
right.
an aye
The
in favor,
motion
just a bit
passes.
slow.
So now we have the second motion is that the annual fee for the market remain at $2,880 for the season.
And that's versus, what would it be?
So if we use, so in the report I have there, I'm sorry, I have to get there. If we use our temporary license of occupation policy, which is what would apply here, that the annual fee for that location would be $4,000.
So we're already at half.
So already.
We're close to half. Okay, so do I have a mover for that, Councillor Sherbo?
mover for
Seconder for the fee.
For the recommendation.
So Councillor Sherbo is recommending that the fee remain at $2,880. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Morrison. Discussion?
Sorry.
Okay, the question
Well-
has, go ahead, Councillor Daly.
Well, I'll offer my amendment at this time that, considering we're not going to have to reschedule transit and we'll have a bit more access to our other streets, and in consideration of them making the move to the market area, that for 1 year, we reduce the fee to $14,440.
I'll second that.
We already have a
All right,
motion.
that's
That's not,
so
excuse
we
me,
would have to
we
defeat.
have a motion on the floor, and a monetary motion is not what I consider a friendly
All right,
amendment.
so
It would have to be an amendment, so he's amending, putting on the floor to amend the motion to that the annual amount be $14.40, right?
and it was seconded by Councillor Purcell. So speaking strictly to the amendment, Council, Councillor Sherbo.
I think we've already reduced the rate, and
Yeah.
and I think the $28.80 is a fair rate.
Councillor Morrison.
I support Councillor Sherbo's position.
Further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, all in favor of the amendment? That's 1 and 2 and 3.
Aye.
And opposed? 1, 2, 3, and that's me, 4. So the amendment fails. Calling the question on the main motion that the annual fee remain at $2,880. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Council. All right, and thanks for weighing in there, Councillor Daly. Our next is the council action items, and if anybody would like to discuss any of those, feel free to now. Otherwise, let's move receipt.
I'll move receipt.
Thank you, Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Sherbo. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have some minutes we have reports from the Finance Department. We have our accounts payable, our quarterly purchasing report, and our building statistics for this quarter.
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Everybody went through that and passed it, and item included in the March 5th regular meeting agenda, that's today, the Lions Park usage policy.
It's not on my,
Oh,
on
sorry,
my
it's
agenda.
no, it's not there. It was, I thought that it was removed from the, it was removed, we pulled it, I'm sorry. I thought that I had actually changed the agenda document itself.
Okay.
So it was, it
Sorry,
is
because I
not
knew that there was something there, and I thought I didn't see it, and I
No.
was trying to find
Yeah,
it, and you guys
it-
whipped
that
through
item will come
council
in-
items so
in
quickly there that,
It's probably gonna come to the special meeting on March 19th. Sarah Winton was working on that, and she was away on vacation.
right.
And then the city manager was away as well, and the two of them need to chat.
Okay, so we'll see that on March 19th. That'll give us plenty of time, because if, at the rate it's snowing, I don't think there's gonna be any fields open for a while. Boy, are we ever getting, we're getting hammered, to put it lightly. So now we're on these reports, and does anyone have any question or comment regarding the 3 reports that are there? Would someone like to move receipt?
$780.
Thank you, Councillor Warmington, second by Councillor Sherbo. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We now have some minutes of council committees, and we have the Cultural Development Committee minutes that are attached in your agenda. Could I have someone move receipt? Thank you, Councillor Warmington, and Councillor Adams. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And we have council reports. Oh, pardon me, we have a late item for Councillor Warmington.
And I'm sorry, this has been emailed to you, but what it is, it's a late resolution to AKBLG regarding the management of public lands and natural resources and the government's reliance on professional reliance. I don't know if...
I have it here, Council. I'll read it out to you. The motion reads, whereas the provincial government is undertaking a review of BC's natural resource sector professional reliance model to be complete by spring 2018, and whereas the use of professional reliance within BC's resource sector is a long-standing practice, and whereas over the past decade the use of professional reliance has increased in response to government's regulatory reform initiatives, and whereas since 2013, the Environmental Appeal Board, Forest Practices Board, Office of the Auditor General, and Office of the Ombudsperson have highlighted the need for adequate oversight of qualified professionals in providing independent, objective advice to government regulators, and whereas there is increasing public concern related to specific instances of decision-making based on professional reliance, therefore, be it resolved that the Government of British Columbia ensure that government oversight of professional associations and professional associations that oversee qualified professionals employ best practices to protect the public interest in the management of public land by the natural resource sector. And that is being moved by Councillor Warmington. And is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Sherbo. And now we'll have some discussion on that.
I mean, this wasn't drafted by me, and I would actually even have stronger language in the therefore be it resolved.
Oh, okay.
So can I, just a couple of things. So we got in touch with AKBLG because we are past the deadline for submission. So what AKBLG said was that they want to, you will have to pass a motion on this if we even want it to get there, but what they said is that it must be a late and emerging issue. The resolutions committee will make the decision on whether they think that this is or not, and then they'll make the call whether it moves forward or not. The other thing that you folks should consider tonight is that we're only permitted 2 whereas statements.
Oh, right. So we would need to do some work on this anyway. Is it something that we can approve in principle and come back?
Yeah, and it would be great if, and so the other thing is we need backup material, so that has to be provided as well. I guess if you take the therefore resolution part of it, and then I will rely on you to get to me in the next couple of days what those whereas statements would be, 2 of them.
So the motion's been moved and seconded, and I think that the intent of this resolution is to ensure proper oversight and independent evaluation of various projects that might happen within the province, and especially in our resource-based areas. Is that your intent?
Yeah, water and forestry in particular.
Especially water and forestry as it relates to that. And discussion, council, would you like to see this move forward? Okay, can I call for the question? All in favor of seeing this move forward? Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Councillor Wormington, for bringing that forward. We now have time for council reports. Councillor Daly, where are you?
Councillor Daly is experiencing Tuesday afternoon at 2:45.
Oh,
In the sunshine.
sunshine, yeah.
In the
I'm
sunshine.
in the state of Tasmania, which is an island off Australia, south of Sydney.
And Councillor, do you have anything at all to report to council? And
No, I'll waive my report until I'm there in person.
thank you, Councillor Daly. Councillor Sherbo.
All right, thanks.
Okay, actually, Councillor Adams and I attended the restorative justice, they had I guess for the lack of a better term, a wine and cheese at the Spirit Bar.
It's volunteer appreciation event.
A volunteer appreciation event.
Hi, Councillor Purcell was there too.
Yeah, you were, sorry. And anyway, that was quite good. And then I attended, Touchstones had a workshop on governance. They have a number of new board members and they're trying to get things off on the right foot. And the same with the library board. They also had a workshop on governance. So, and then I attended the Isuzu AGM at what do you say that? Bigby Place. And that was good. And then I also, with the mayor, who else was there at the coldest night of the year?
Councillor Morrison.
Councillor Morrison.
She chugged along.
So we hoofed around there and got a bowl of chili.
And it wasn't it great that they said they exceeded what they
Yes.
asked for?
I
It was,
forget
that
the
was great.
exact amount, but they,
Yeah.
and we're something like 29th in the list of cities
Oh, good.
on raising money for the coldest night of the year. And then I had a regular library board meeting, so the library board's getting together and getting organized and setting up committees and that. And then last but not least was the Police Foundation dinner, and which Councillor Adams and I attended. The Cuffs for a Cause, and that was what?
You owe me $20.
I owe you $20.
Gosh.
I just
I
remembered.
don't need
sorry.
to bring that out in the middle of the council meeting. I guess that's part of the report.
That is.
Anyway,
I forgot.
so did I. I don't have any money.
Carry on, Councillor.
That's it.
That's it? Okay, thank you.
Councillor Adams threw me right out of whack.
Yes, he did. All right. Councillor Purcell.
Okay.
I hope you don't owe him any money.
A couple of the things that I did that maybe I didn't see other people at, because we all went to budget meetings and we've all, I was at the volunteer appreciation night for the restorative justice. It was amazing, and I have, in the process of preparing to say a few words there, wound up learning a lot about our restorative justice program, and just feel really proud that we have something like that flourishing in our community. But and another thing I wanted to tell everyone, remind everyone that Flynn Row, Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations, and Rural Development is looking for input about rural development until March 7th. I sent everybody the link. I didn't see any of your names in the comments. You guys too. Anybody living in rural BC can comment. And it's important for them to hear our voices. There are 5 key areas they're looking for input on. You can also fill out you could do a stakeholder submission that's a little bit separate than the 5 areas around youth, technology, Indigenous relationship, and resources. So key issues in our development that we have an opportunity to have a voice around. So let's get on that. I went to the Civic Center webinar on smart cities, which is really important. They are really interesting, rather. They talked about the importance of moving from an industrial age mindset to a digital age mindset to the importance of training digital age workers from a young age, and saying things like asking if we need more broadband when we have DSL today is like asking if we need more electricity when we already have candles. So they were making that equivalency. The digital age, they said, is seen to have four main characteristics. It's combinatorial, digital, exponential, and disruptive. It took the phone 75 years to get 75 million users, and it took Pokemon Go 1 month to get 75 million users. So the need has never been greater for vigilance and nimble responsiveness around being tech ready and digital age ready. I went to the province's poverty reduction event that was held at the school at Wildflower School Gym, Central School Gym. About 62-ish people came out. It was very well attended by the province, and so people got to have their say about what they felt the province's poverty reduction strategy should look like. I went to a Kootenay Lake Partnership meeting, one of our quarterly meetings. So they're moving towards regional and municipal implementation of their shoreline guidance document, a workshop scheduled with Front Counter on April 12th. And work is also being done to incorporate kind of post-European arrival historic sites that are already protected by law, but they weren't fulsomely included in the mapping in this document. So they're addressing that issue. I went to an event at WECTEP at UBC that was co-sponsored by Selkirk College and our local Amnesty group on the human rights situation in Honduras, and Wayne Stetsky was there. And there was a lot of discussion about Canadian mining policy in foreign countries, and the plight of the husband of a Canadian who's been detained in Honduras without any due process whatsoever. He was just disappeared, and she hasn't heard a word from him for months now, which I can only imagine how stressful that must be. Also, the City of Victoria recently passed a plastic bag reduction bylaw in January. It goes into effect this summer, but people don't start getting fined for not following it until next January. So that gives people, they worked for a couple of years with their legal department, with the business community in Victoria, and with staff to really figure it out. So they feel like they came up with a bylaw that really worked, and are giving businesses ample time to use up their plastic bag stock, and for the public to adjust to that new idea. And I know that there's considerable interest in our own community around reducing plastic for lots of different reasons. So I think we can expect this issue to be coming forward here as well.
Thanks, Councillor.
A bunch of other stuff, but I think other people were there, so.
I just thought I'd let people know ICBC is doing consultations on what makes a bad driver. So anybody can send their ideas to ICBC, and that begins Monday, the survey. And the aim is eventually to make bad drivers pay more and good drivers pay less.
Don't they do that already?
Not very effectively, obviously.
Councillor Morrison.
Wow, I'm still reeling from Councillor Purcell's activities in the last few weeks. I went to Vancouver, and what happens when you go to Vancouver, as the mayor can attest, is that you what happens in Vancouver stays in Vancouver, because you never come home on the same day. So
The same way.
yeah, well, exactly. So I went to Vancouver, and I got to see it snow. Gee, gosh, it was
Vancouver?
Yeah, a lot when I was there for 2 weeks. So things that have been going on, and I forgot to mention this at the beginning of last month, and that was, for anybody that hasn't been, I really encourage everybody to go to the Flea, which is the little flea market at the youth center that's held the first Saturday of the month. I've gone a couple of times, and it's really interesting to see the young people in the community and their imagination. There's I don't know what, burning wood, like wood burnishing, you know, come and I'll make a keychain and I'll put they'll put my initials on it or write my name. They've got the tools there. There was a young woman who said, oh my Lord, beautiful artist, and she does sketches, and then somehow on her computer, this is where I need Anna to fill me in, is she turns them into these unbelievable colored, glossy, frameable pieces of art. And it's kind of cutting edge, like she's fairly young and she has these really involved pictures. Yeah, I mean, it was great. Then there was the cookies and the, like as if I need another cookie. But it's great. I would encourage you to go out and see our youth in that venture. I'm sure Council Warmington will touch on the fact that we had a very brief Recreation Commission meeting this month as we wound up and I think decided on the budgetary implications for 2018 for Nelson and the E and F in terms of funding for recreation. We've had more of my favorite budget meetings. We had another one on the 27th, and I thought it was really fulsome. I thought the discussion was some of the best discussion we've ever had at a city budget meeting, and I think that was the last of them, or at least that was what I was promised by the CFO. Just a reminder too that this week on Wednesday is our open house at the library to have for public comment on the budget process, and I guess depending on what the feedback is there, we might have another budget meeting. I, along as Councillor Sherbo said, and the mayor were at the Coldest Night event. Their goal was $35,000. The last time I looked on the event sheet, it was over $37,000, so they were quite happy with their uptake on that. Some things coming up this week, so I'll steal the thunder here before anybody else does, is it's International Women's Day on the 8th, on Thursday. And there's a number of events going on here in Nelson, as there always are for International Women's Day, which actually should probably be International Women's Month, but we have a day, so we will make the most of it. There's an event at Touchstones on the 8th, the Kootenai Divas, which are never to be missed on any occasion, let alone International Women's Day, are doing a dinner and dance on the 9th. There's a lot of celebration going on, particularly this year for International Women's Day, because the Nelson District Women's Center has been operating here in Nelson for 45 years. It's one of the longest running, if not the longest running, women's center in Canada. So they have lots to be proud of, and the work goes on there. And they've just gotten they now have two people just hired as co-directors, and I'm sure they'll be bringing some new and exciting programming to the Women's Center. Other things coming up that I thought were of interest for people, there's naloxone training clinics coming up. For anybody that doesn't already know, I've had training in this.
When's that?
There's a few dates, 19th and the 22nd and the 26th here in town. So if you're interested in that, and if you take the training, you will get an naloxone kit in case you need to have to use it. And I think the more people that take that kind of training, that helps with the stigma associated with opioid and drug use. And then, of course, there's the point-in-time homeless count, which is on April the 11th. And, of course, we'll have more meetings and more reports before that. But there is quite an extensive training that goes into this. So if people are interested, they need to know that now if they want to participate in that April 11th activity. The other thing that's coming up for me is next Tuesday. We're having our second Housing Committee meeting of the year, now that we've moved to every other month. And so, of course, I'm sure it will be a jam-packed lunchtime hour as we're having some presentations from the planning department, but also I'm sure there will be some commentary on the highs and potentially lows of the last provincial and federal budgets. So 2 budgets, a presentation, and 1 hour. I don't know exactly who's gonna win. Anyhow, that's my report.
I forgot two important things.
Oh my goodness.
Well, just one.
Council's been really busy.
It's been busy. I went to the cannabis job fair and public meeting at the Prestige.
Did you get a job?
No, although, I'm, thinking about it. But no, they, about 120 people showed up and they laid out a very ambitious platform for how this kind of co-op, thing could work. There seemed to be a lot of public interest, even in the horizontal driving snow. So that was interesting. And the other thing I wanted to mention was I went to the art opening at Touchstones Museum last Friday. A prairie artist from Saskatchewan, from Saskatoon, Paul Sisquasis. I don't know if I'm saying his last name correctly, but he's an Indigenous artist who has an exhibit in Gallery B, and it's fantastic. It's got some local photos from our Indigenous population along one wall, and then the other three walls are taken from various archives around, and they're just gorgeous, human, non-stereotypical depictions of Indigenous life, and well worth a boo.
Thank you. Before I go to Councillor Adams, I'm just going to acknowledge that Mr. Woodward joined us this evening as well. Thank you, and I wanted to let you know that Council moved absolutely with lightning speed tonight, and the information that you're probably looking for has already been passed. So the market will go ahead as planned. The motion as written, or the recommendation as written, was passed, and we wish you the best.
Hall Street, both.
Oh, yeah, 400 and 500 blocks? Yep, that's correct. And staff will be discussing possible future locations as well, because council did have some talk about that, and pros and cons of other locations. So we wish you the best, and thanks for running the market. It's pretty popular. All right.
Current funding level, like not an increase in cost, like right?
Yeah.
The current fee.
Well, 2880.
And thank you for attending and making the effort to get here. Yeah, you probably would have been safe earlier to be here an hour later, but tonight we moved very quickly. Oh yeah, you're welcome. Councillor Adams, what's new with you?
I don't know, I think everybody took all my thunder.
Yeah, it's been.
Robin,
You were at business after business, because Mike told me you were there last week.
I was. Well, I'm getting down there. I gotta go down. I've had Seniors 51 meeting this month, or February rather, and the next one is on this Wednesday at 10:30. I was at the Rotary dinner. I think that's the one Robin talked about, and the one this past Thursday, the Police Association one. And
Saturday.
You know the story? There's no pressure. He forgot his wallet at home, so I had to lend him some money, and I totally forgot. And he didn't even remember. Okay.
I don't think that should be in the council report.
It's totally fine, Councillor Sherbo. You wouldn't believe how many times my friends have bailed me out when I've forgotten my stuff today.
On some of my other duties, not as a councillor, as an Aboriginal elder or Métis elder, I've been at L.V. Rogers School, Trafalgar School. We did a blanket exercise for the whole school board, School District 8.
That's good.
And I have another one not till November up in Caslo. What else? Of course, budget meetings, I've done them all. I don't think I missed one. The next week, I have the West Kootenay Transportation Committee meeting in Castlegar.
Oh, finally.
Finally, yes. And then next Thursday is the Seniors Transportation Committee meeting here. This Wednesday, I think it's moved to this Wednesday, NAEPD.
NAEDP.
Huh?
NAEDP.
DP. Nelson Area Economic, Development. I got corrected. Is this Wednesday? And there is a budget meeting on Wednesday also. So it's been quite busy.
It has been busy.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been very busy. Councillor Warmington.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. I attended my first hospital board meeting, and that was really interesting. The results of a previous priority setting were there. And it's interesting, there's a lot of competing priorities throughout the region. Our infrastructure is aging rapidly. Things are changing, technology is changing. And so there's a lot on the wish list. We had a look at the budget, the proposed budget from IHA, and began some of the work in setting that budget, which is going to be extremely tough because when you have so many needs, some of them are really competing. There's very high dollar amounts on all of these things. So I think a very difficult, challenging workload they've got ahead of them there. Yes, and I have to say that, sustainability comes to mind throughout that entire meeting. I couldn't help but think about how is this sustainable into the future. So very interesting, really tough, I think. I won't get too much into that, but I also attended a Columbia Basin Trust Climate Action Workshop. Again, a really challenging issue. The science is not looking great, particularly in our region. We're seeing more warming than the global average. And the predictions about what our climate and what our ecosystems are going to look like, in fairly near future, I think is quite alarming. We're really looking at what looks like to be considerably hotter and very much drier seasons. We will have wetter winters, but it's going to run off very quickly. So looking now, CBT is really trying to go to the next stage and look at what kind of projects can we run. And this was very much about brainstorming projects and what would priority projects look like. And so there'll be some follow-up workshops following up on some of those ideas. There was a great group of people there. There were probably 40 people, but a really wide range of participants. So very interesting, but worrying as well. NAEDP, I sit on the coordinating committee and attended a meeting where there were school district representatives and business representatives really looking at trying to fill the gap between what's needed employment-wise and what's offered education-wise. So that process is just beginning, but moving along and very interesting. There was a community investment workshop some time ago. I didn't intend, but it was very well attended. I think you were there.
It was fantastic.
And so great feedback from that. Lots of community interest in investing locally. So that's great news. And then the third thing that they're really working on right now is an innovation center. And unfortunately, I had a sick child and had to miss that meeting. But again, they've got some really great people involved and looking forward to hearing more coming out of that. There was lots more, but I think I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Councillor. Wow, everybody has been extremely busy. Something that council might be really interested in, we had a presentation, if you'll remember, from the Street Outreach Team Coordinator, Rona Park, and also Sean Sikowski, and who else was sitting in that chair? But for our street outreach program, and they were waiting to hear regarding funding. I just got word today that from Rona that IH has come through with $35,000, same as they did last year. Thank goodness. So that's really good news for the program and for this as they launch into they're beginning their third year. So that was really good to hear. The other, I've been, like you, I've been busy as well. On this week, this month, or this last week, I attended the Union of British Columbia Municipalities Advocacy Days. So I sit on the executive board, and Advocacy Days was held in Victoria. And it is an opportunity for people on UBCM to meet with ministers directly to advocate on behalf of issues that are important to the province and local governments. So there were three main objectives that we talked to ministers about. One was, of course, the housing crisis in our province. Secondly was infrastructure, continuing, the province would continue to support infrastructure grants, and it was 30-30-30 split from the feds. We're asking for 40%, seeing as 65% of all infrastructure that is owned by government is owned at local government level. So we're asking the province to give us a bit more to complete those projects. And the third main topic was the opioid crisis. I have to say that all of the ministers we met with were really receptive. They are working hard. They would like and at the same time, just the day before we started our meetings with ministers, the provincial budget came down. So many of the things that we wanted to talk about were covered in this year's budget, but there were other things that we were also able to address as well. It was the first time as well, Premier Horgan met with the entire board. He usually meets only with the president of the board and executive director, but he asked to meet with all of us, and it was great. He had just walked in after he spoke with us. He was feeling pretty happy because the wine was flowing across the Alberta border again. It was kind of funny to do that. So that meeting was great, and I was keeping tabs with Councillor Morrison because both she and I were stranded in Vancouver. Lord, those people don't know what to do with snow. Speaking of snow budget, are we still under budget this year? Are we fast approaching?
We did a bit of a comparator, and right now we're actually slightly ahead of where we were at this point in time last year, which is not a great thing. One of the big benefits, though, is that last year at this point in time, we had to hire out and haul with lots of trucks. We don't see that we'll need that this year, but we will definitely be right on or slightly over budget. It was what I'm predicting for the current year.
Right, and a lot of that snow is coming in the new year.
Yes. So again, to the January, February time period, we're actually ahead of last year. So, yeah.
Well, keep your fingers crossed, folks. Thank you for that. As well, so I also attended the Municipal Insurance Association board meeting, and the property insurance program for local governments, that arm that they've rolled out, there's some new takers in that. There's I think the town of Invermere is looking at it closely, and a couple of other communities, and it's doing well. And right on the heels of that, I attended the Association of Kootenay Boundary Local Governments quarterly meeting, and that was held in Fernie. Council will be encouraged to know that Fernie is hosting the annual conference in April of this year, and the town of Fernie is really excited about having us, and they are looking forward to hosting the conference this year. So the late resolution, we've already posted a couple of resolutions. The executive was looking at resolutions this weekend, as well as they'll have another one to consider from us, which is great. Don't forget that this coming Friday, or is it Saturday? I think it's Saturday. Is the 10th. Capitol Theatre is going to be celebrating its 30th anniversary, and it's going to be a gala night. It sounds like they're going to celebrate right. It's amazing to me that it's been 30 years ago that it was refurbished and reopened. I think that the theater opened initially in 1927, and then after some time it went derelict for a while, and some people with vision brought it back up, and it's become a kind of a heartbeat of the community again. So
it opened as a movie theater.
It did, that's right. And now it's a live performance space, and it serves has served us well for 30 years. So make sure you come out and celebrate with them. I think I mentioned to you that the Columbia River Treaty Local Governments Committee will be doing a priority setting session on March 16th. But as well, members of that committee will be attending the Lake Roosevelt Forum in Spokane, Washington on April 24th. We don't go every year. It's a forum that's held every year, but this year we think it's important because we'd like to meet with our U.S. counterparts in local governments and reiterate the needs of the people of the basin as well. So that'll be happening in April. I want to remind everybody to come to our public budget presentation. It'll be held at the library on Wednesday of this week, starting at 6 o'clock. And this is Mr. or is it? Am I mistaken?
The doors open at 6, Your Worship. My presentation will be at 7, but it'll be an opportunity to meet with council and senior staff that will be there.
And it's always a really great presentation. So if you haven't been to the library lately, it's a good chance for you to come and stroll around the library too. And like I said, it's Mr. McClure's opportunity to shine and let you know what we've been deliberating about for the past few months. And council has been working really hard on the budget. There's been excellent presentations from staff, and now we're going to roll it out to the public and see what you think before we get down to passing that budget for this coming year. That's it for me at this point, and let's move on.
I just wanted to mention the library is going to do some renovations in the library to make it more, to make all corners more visible. So obviously they won't have them done by the time we do the budget meeting, but they've done a risk assessment and need to open the library up so it's more visible for the staff and people that are using the library.
No. Okay. Well, I know it's probably one of the most heavily used spaces in our community by people of all ages and walks of life. It's a pretty vibrant space, and right from infants to seniors, everybody's in there making it happen. So it's great. We have an in-camera item to be released to the public. And that is that council approved the appointment of Anne de Grace, representing literature, for a one-year term expiring on December 31st to the Council Cultural Development Committee. And we also appointed Donna McDonald, Barb Henry, Ron Little, and Dale Donaldson to the 2018 Council Indemnity Review Committee. So thank you very much to those volunteers. We really rely on volunteers in the community to get the work of council done. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor Sherbo, second by Councillor Purcell. All in favor? Opposed? And the motion is carried. And thanks, Council. That was great. It's only 8:15.
We're back in camera, are we not?
And we're back in camera.
Oh, yes.
Is there any interest?
It's a 10. Look, it's only a 10.
It's time for the